Chapter 16. First Dispute.
Khan stared at the two old men standing in front of him. These bastards attacking you and me finally finding them at the same time is just a coincidence.
Nothing more.
Khan said as he got up on his feet. The next moment, the elderly took out a pouch full of coins that were bulging out of it.
He said,
Lad, take this as a gratitude for saving our lives. I don't have any other way to thank you at the moment. So please accept this. The elderly man pushed forward the pouch full of coins.
Keep it.
I don't want your money.
Khan declined.
This raised the opinion of him in the eyes of both the men in front of him. Not only did he came in the last moment and saved their lives, even though he did it to avenge his comrades, it was still an unforgettable deed. And then he declined the money as well. In their line of work, just hiring a bodyguard demanded an exorbitant price, and many merchants won't do it unless the profits were extremely well-paying. But when faced with life and death situation, many of these hired experts often chose to run instead of honoring their deal to protect the employer. Khan's gesture made it sure that he didn't appear in the last second just to fork out more money from them as a form of compensation. The middle-aged man nodded at his conduct. Tell me, lad, what's your name? The middle-aged man asked.
Khan. Replied Khan with no other emotions on his face.
This helped him maintain his image of someone grieving but trying to control it on the surface.
I'm Marcus,
leader of the Diamond Adventurer team.
Well,
what's left of it anyway? The middle-aged man. Marcus gazed back at the dead bodies of his fallen comrades. His eyes were wavering with grief, but he was maintaining a calm and patient look on his face. Like a true leader who must be able to control himself in any situation. His comrades, however, shedding tears at the bodies of their dead friends and team members. I'm sorry for your loss. Maybe if I reached here any sooner, some of your comrades could have survived. Khan said with an empathizing tone, as if he too understood the loss.
Not your fault.
You've already helped us enough. Said Marcus. The elderly man decided to introduce himself as well. My name is Nicola, leader of Black Griffin Merchant Enterprise. He reached his hand to shake. Khan shook his hand and nodded. Do you have a place to go? Why not come with us?
Nicola asked.
Where's the nearest town from here? I have been in this forest for weeks now. Said Khan candidly. To survive in this dense forest for weeks on your own. No wonder you're so strong and good at killing. Marcus said. He already had judged Khan to be a trustworthy person, and he gave a side glance to the elderly man.
If you don't mind,
you can come with us. I can help you get back to your home. Said the old merchant.
I don't have a home.
Not anymore. Said Khan with a crestfallen look as if remembering his fallen family again.
Accompany us.
Then decide what you want to do next. Staying here is not safe. Nicola said with a caring voice. If not for Khan, none of them would be breathing now. He wanted to repay this favor in any way he could. And they too had their fair share of people to mourn. Khan nodded and joined the team. After clearing the battlefield and putting all their dead colleagues and comrades in different carts, the team of remaining survivors finally left off. For the next 2 days, they traveled without a problem. Khan kept it to himself and didn't converse with anyone much, including the old man Nicola, maintaining his image of someone grieving. The whole mood of the caravan was of loss and suffering, everyone grieving in their own ways except this guy who was just keeping up an act. Finally, after they reached well-paved stone roads and saw a giant city gate, only then did Khan's eyes showed some interest. As he looked towards the giant city gates full of people going in and out, many demi-humans and the type of people he didn't even read about in any fantasy-related novel or story among them, Khan got curious. There were 3 things on his priority list now.
Khan spoke to himself. Money. Information.
Authority. The giant gates of the city were full of the crowd running to and fro, going in and out without stopping. A huge plaque was nailed on the top of the city gates. The first city Khan came to see in Vantria ever since he entered was called Flavit.
Stop.
Identification first. Said the guard on duty, who was donned in a well-fit armor suitable for a gatekeeper. Let me handle this. Said the elderly merchant Nicola. He went and talked with the gate guard, pointing his finger towards Khan, who was still half-naked in the wolf hide. The guard gave an understanding look to Nicola, and the old man secretly passed a small pouch of coins to the guard. You may pass. Said the guard, and their caravan moved along. The other guards didn't say or stop them either as they entered the city. It looked as if all of them had a share in bribes. Civilization. Finally Khan saw well-made buildings and houses, entire streets full of people of different races, facial structures and many unrecognizable species Con hadn't seen or heard of before. There were some among the crowd that didn't walk, rather crawled on the stone-paved road, while some more than 2 to 3 legs. Con could see that the buildings didn't follow any set type of architecture or design either. Some were made from hard stones, while some were made of lustrous woods and aesthetically pleasing to look at. Even though Con did not know or understand any of the words or the language written on the top of these buildings and shops, his brain was registering and telling him their meanings thanks to the all-languages knowledge blessing he received from Kravel, the war deity. He too realized that when he was speaking with others, his mouth movements spilled very different words and languages he didn't even know. Just that the mind connection was telling him that he spoke with something he too understood. He had broken the language barrier he'd have to surpass if he wanted to mix inside this new world. Con thanked Kravel again in his mind. After going through a long distance and crossing various streets, finally their group stopped around a large building with multiple doors and people coming and going out of the building, which was as big as a complete football ground and had gates in all 4 directions. The Adventurers Association. Marcus went inside the building and later came back with over a dozen of people who looked like the staff of the organization. They started unloading the bodies of the deceased that died in the bandit ambush. Just then, Nicola, along with a young man who was of the same age as Con, walked behind him. By the way, this is my son, Elenev. Said Nicola. The young man beside Nicola finally spoke. Thank you for saving our lives that day. I didn't get to thank you properly because it was my first time watching something.
So.
To this, Con stopped him midway with a hand gesture and spoke.
Understood.
Nobody can digest it the first time.
Con, what will you do from here?
You said you don't have a home or a place to go a couple of days ago. Asked Nicola.
No idea.
I've only lived a life as a mercenary since childhood. The only thing I'm good at is killing people and monsters alike.
Con said in a worn-out manner.
He was faking his background right on the spot, which would also justify how he was really good and organized while killing those bandits one by one.
Why don't you come with us for now?
I can offer you a place to stay and get used to this place. I still haven't repaid you for saving our lives. Nicola reminded again about his previous proposal.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Nodded Con. This was what he needed the most right now. A place to stay and make his future plans.
Great.
This way, we'll get to know each other better as well. Said Elenev. He too was very thankful to Con and wanted to help him out after hearing from his father that Con was alone and lost all his friends and family to the bandit attack. By the way, what does your merchant enterprise sell? Con asked as the dozen of carts they rode until now were big enough to carry a lot of goods, and apart from the 2 they used for the dead bodies, the rest were completely full.
We dabble in all of them.
Food, weapons, medicine and rations. We even have our own blacksmith shops in the city. The carts have resources and even weapons we bought from small villages which we'll sell in our shops later. Replied Nicola with a proud expression.
Wow.
That must have taken years to build and solidify your enterprise. Con said in admiration. He was an accountant in his previous life. He knew how hard it was to open a business and keeping it afloat, let alone making profits out of it. And to manage all these different sectors in the business, one had to work very hard and very efficiently. Just one wrong move was enough to ruin it all. We have to bring some people to carry the carts back to our warehouses. So it will take some time. Why don't you take a look around the Adventurers Association till then? Said Elenev. I was already planning to do that. I have some monster cores to sell. I'll make some money there as well.
Clothes can come later.
Said Con. Okay, we'll see you later. Said Nicola and left with his son. Con entered through the giant door and surprisingly nobody stopped him. As soon as he entered the inside of the Adventurers Association, he looked towards the crowd sitting inside the huge hall. At the end of it were receptionists engaged with various adventurers. Amongst the crowd, Con saw some werewolf beastmen, elves, some who looked like lizardmen and even a guy with nothing but a giant eye in the middle of his face, like a cyclops. Con walked towards one of the vacant counters, where there was an old man around his 60s. I have some monster cores to sell. What's the procedure?
Asked Con.
The old man looked at Con and his attire, surprised.
Sorry.
But we only deal with registered adventurers. Said the old man who resembled Alfred from Batman movies a lot.
How do I sign up? Asked Con.
Identification, and you'll have to go through our assessment first. If you pass, you'll be officially registered as part of Adventurers Association. Replied the man with no expression on his face. as if he had uttered the same line millions of times.
I don't have any.
Never needed it before. Is there any other way? Asked Con. That's a bit of a problem. Said the old man. Just then, a voice rang from behind Con. Oi, get out of the way. I'm in a hurry. Con turned his head to his back and saw a blonde girl clad in full body armor resembling that of a knight. Can't you see I'm talking here? Besides, I came here first. Con replied and turned his head back toward the old man. What important things a barbarian like you have to do? Just do them later after I'm done, you disgusting caveman. Said the girl again. Con rolled his eyes and didn't mind the banter as he continued to talk with the receptionist. However, their little argument brought the attention of the nearby people, some looking pitifully at Con as if he was going to suffer dire consequences for rebuking the girl. Another one. Sighed a bald man who was sitting on a bench across the room. Hey, are you ignoring me, you fucking imbecile? Roared the girl. Con got pissed at this point and turned his head towards the girl. Hey princess, don't you know the basic manners? You get in line and wait for your turn. Con said with an annoyed expression on his face. Suddenly, the entire hall went silent. Even the receptionists working on other counters stopped their tasks.
See you.
What did you just call me? The girl pulled the sword out of the sheath that was hanging on her waist.
Princess.
What, you don't like compliments? Or should I call you gorgeous instead? Replied Con with a solemn expression.
You bastard.
I'm a man, said the girl.
The man. Author. It's a trap.
What?
You're joking, right?
You're too pretty to be a man. Con said with a surprised tone. Fumes of rage came across the face of the girl who was claiming to be a man. At this, suddenly the crowd burst into laughter.
Ha ha ha. Too pretty to be a man. That's a new one. Ha ha ha.
Many amongst the crowd started laughing at the blonde who was pointing the sword tip at Con at this point. The old receptionist, behind the counter, sighed.
Don't make trouble.
It's just a misunderstanding. He said to the blonde pretty boy.
What did you say?
Don't you know who I am? Do you want to get your bones broken by our adventurers team, you old bastard? The blonde guy shouted and trembled with rage as if he was going to jump on the old receptionist the next second. Con had enough of it already. He asked the old man. Is it allowed to beat someone inside the association building? The old man was stunned but quickly replied.
No.
Not as long as it injures anyone gravely.
I see. Said Con said candidly. You think you can beat me, you fucker? The blonde shouted. Slap.
A loud noise of a crisp slap sounded in the hall. Many people having their mouths open and some rooted on the spot. In front of Con lied the blonde guy who was cursing him for no reason. The blonde guy's left cheek was full of red finger marks and he fell on the floor with just a single bitch slap. Get out of here before I get angry.
Chapter 17. The Ambush.
The entire Hall of Adventurers Association had pin-drop silence. You. The blonde guy got up and charged with his sword pointed towards Con's abdomen. Con quickly sidestepped and sent out a punch in the guy's abdomen instead. His reaction time and the attack were very fast. Many couldn't even see it properly.
Bang!
The sound of metal and floor colliding rang. The blonde man lied on the floor 5 meters away from Con. That one punch alone was enough to fling him back. The blonde guy got up, his body trembling, and barely managed to stand up. He looked towards his armor and saw a big fist-like dent that was caved in. This punch would have put him close to death if not for the metal armor. Just you wait here. I'll see if you can stand on your feet after I'm back. Said the blonde guy and ran out embarrassingly. That wasn't very wise, young man. He's the younger brother of the leader of Groundhog Adventurers team. They're very powerful and barely 2 other teams can rival them. This guy won't let this incident go. It's better if you leave now. Said the old receptionist with concern on his face. What about the registration? Con asked as if what happened just now didn't bother him.
Come some other day.
It's not safe for you to be here any longer. We can't protect you as soon as you leave the premises of the association. It's better to get a head start and hide. Said the old receptionist. Do me a favor, at least give me some money for these. I don't have a single coin on me. Said Con and passed over 6 red monster cores to the old man. Understanding his situation, the old receptionist didn't preach about rules. He too liked Con for standing up against the blonde princess guy who was badmouthing them both. He quickly took out a pouch with dozens of coins in them and passed them to Con. Go find some inn or guest house to stay out of trouble. They won't go searching around through the entire city just for one person, said the old receptionist. Thanks, said Khan as he grabbed the pouch and left the building. He didn't think about waiting for Nikola and Elenev, as this incident wouldn't bring anything good to the father and son duo. They were honest merchants, after all. After watching the old receptionist and people across the hall, Khan got the hint that he had picked up a fight with someone he shouldn't have messed with just by the expression of the people present there. He wasn't stupid enough to get an innocent bystander mixed in his fights. Khan went to a nearby clothes shop and brought himself some clothes. A brown shirt and black pant combo, with boots that perfectly fit him. He was no longer a half-naked man. He finally felt like a normal human being again. His next stop was none other than the city library. What he needed first was information about the world of Vantria. Otherwise, he'd be out of the loop many times, and won't be able to answer many questions of his origin or basic knowledge that was already in the populace. That'd raise many suspecting eyes. After asking around many citizens, Khan finally reached the city library. The place was half the size of the Adventurers Association, but already too big for a library. After paying a small fee, Khan entered inside and asked for books related to the history of countries and information about the demographics of the place he was in. Khan found his eidetic memory from his previous life kicking in again. Khan was relieved to notice it and sped up his search for all the useful information. He spent the next 4 hours reading through all the books about countries and general knowledge-related records. Khan had no words to describe the information he gained. This wasn't just random iSky world. It transcended beyond anything Khan had heard or read in his previous life. Vantria had a total of 15 empires. Each one was as big as a continent on Earth. 11 of these empires worshipped different gods. None worshipping God of Darkness at all. All these empires were ruled by different species and had the doctrine of these gods practiced throughout their history and cultures. Elven Empire worshipped God of Life, Dwarven Empire worshipped God of Fire, Beast Empire served God of Earth, etc. The remaining 4 empires did not worship or serve any god on the paper. One empire was ruled by the mythical and mountain-sized dragons, who were the strongest beings in the entire world. They did not get mixed in with other empires and didn't allow any form of contact with outsider species as well. One empire was literally underwater as it was the sea itself. No different than Atlantis from the Aquaman movie. The most recently formed empire was none other than the Demon Empire, which served and worshipped the demon god. It was formed around 500 years ago. However, Khan did not find any detailed information on it. This empire was currently at war with 4 neighboring empires. And then the last one was none other than the empire Khan was sent to by God of Darkness. The Rocco's Empire. Even in the Rocco's Empire, Khan was currently situated at the edge of the empire. And what Khan found about the history of his current whereabouts surprised him even more. The forest he was sent in was the biggest forest in the entire world, spanning more than 80,000 kilometers. Yet no empire dared to take control of it, as it had too many monsters and, according to some rumors, few god-beasts living in it. The Rocco's Empire wasn't ruled by any particular race or had no royal family controlling it. It was based on a democratic structure for governing, similar to many countries on Earth. And that's why there were no limitations on any particular race, species, and ethnicity. God of Darkness indeed sent him to a place he could gradually fit in and grow stronger. In Rocco's, preaching or creating any religious organization, such as churches and temples, were prohibited and punishable by death. There were no exceptions, as the empire believed in equality regardless of origins, and bringing in factors such as religious views and beliefs regarding the supremacy of a particular species or class of people would breed nothing but chaos. The empire had gone through many wars and coups to reach where it was now. This was just very convenient for Khan, who needed a place to hide and build his strength over time until he could protect himself even against the entire world. The language they spoke in Rocco's empire was Flavan, a language derived from the first ever empire that existed in the world of Vantria but now forgotten by history. And the established currency was Dramus. As the sunset fell, Khan finally left the library and decided to look for Nicola's Black Griffin Merchant Enterprise. He needed a place to stay after all. But after walking few miles, he suddenly stopped. His expression turning somber and his eyes turning wary on the spot. His face turned that of rage. Because at this moment, his survival instinct ability was warning him. He had a couple of eyes looking at him from the shadows, full of killing intent. Khan could not see anyone in his surrounding that exuded any malicious intent towards him. Yet he couldn't afford to be careless either. Khan changed his direction and headed towards the outer areas of the city. After finally exiting the city from one of the gates, Khan started running towards the dense tree lines and grounds that weren't occupied and were out of reach for city security to interfere. He finally stopped amidst these tall trees as he found a suitable place big enough to contain a fight. As soon as he stopped, several footsteps could be heard from behind him. A couple of people appeared out of nowhere as if they were invisible before.
Assassins.
These people took out daggers and surrounded Khan, not letting him escape. Khan, on the other hand, simply waited as if he was expecting someone. Just a couple of minutes later, more than 10 people joined the assassins. All of them looked just like the adventurers he saw earlier today.
Yeah, Master Ilya.
Bringing so many people just for one guy. Don't you think that's a bit of a stretch? A man donning mage robes asked. From behind him, a familiar figure walked in, covered fully under metal armor and a well-crafted sword in his hand. Did you really expect to live long after provoking me, you bastard? Said the figure. It was none other than the blonde guy Khan beat inside the Adventurers Association Hall. I'll give you a last chance. If you lick my boots and cut off both of your legs, I might let you live. Said the blonde guy with a condescending look on his face. Khan didn't falter or was scared in any way.
He said,
With just you guys? You don't have the skills to make me beg in front of you.
Ha ha ha.
This guy must be so scared that his brain doesn't work anymore. Said one of the adventurers. The other armed men started circling Khan and took out their weapons. Khan, however, stood firm and had no hesitation in his eyes. His broad shoulders and warrior-like build appeared akin to an immovable mountain. Can't you see that you're surrounded by us? Said the blonde guy as he took out his sword and pointed it at Khan. Khan only smirked, his eyes full of murderous intent, as if he had already declared these people surrounding him as dead. Since he was out of the sight of public eyes, he had no reason to hold back anymore.
Va dominance.
Khan released his war dominance aura and covered everyone in his 20-meter radius. A pressure strong enough to make a grown man fall on his knees was released from his body. Every single one of these men started shuddering in fear, their bodies barely managing to stand up. Some already fell on their knees and started looking at Khan as if they saw a monster.
You don't get it, son.
I'm not surrounded by you, Khan said as he walked menacingly towards the group of men, releasing his dense aura full of chaotic energy and killing intent as if a war god was looking down on all of the creations. You're all surrounded by me.
Chapter 18. I'm Vengeance.
In a desolate area surrounded by the dense tree line, a man was facing a group of people pointing their weapons at him. However, instead of running away and cowering in fear, the man walked towards this hostile group with an overbearing demeanor. Khan stared at the group that was surrounding him from all directions, but none of them dared to move a single step forward. Under Khan's war dominance aura, the group of Groundhog Adventurer team members shuddered in fear and many had beads of sweat dripping from their foreheads. Now which one of you wants to die first? Khan said as he kept releasing his chaotic and deathly aura. Khan's war dominance aura had undergone many qualitative changes after he hunted down many powerful monsters and absorbed their physical and innate skills. He had already merged few abilities under the war dominance blessing given to him by the war deity himself. The current extent of this ability was far beyond when he hunted the pack of wolves and almost died on his first day in the forest. And Khan had also leveled up by many levels after eating the core of the legendary Somir. He was no longer a man who'd get surprised easily or react hastily, rather someone who always maintained a calm and calculative mind. That's why he lured these people outside of the city when they were pursuing him. This way, there would be no witnesses.
No one?
I guess I should go by my personal preference, Khan said as he gave a small smirk and looking around. Fireball, as shouted the mage in the group and sent out a giant fireball at Khan. Khan, who had both his survival intent and hunter's intent active at the moment, sensed it as soon as the mage started casting the spell. Khan quickly used the side hopper ability he created after he combined the long stride and sprinter ability during the previous 2 days when he was traveling towards the Flavit city with the caravan.
Bang!
The giant fireball finally hit a human body. Just not Khan, but the man that was standing behind him.
What the? Said the mage.
His spell was really fast and his aim was accurate, but he hit his comrade instead of Khan.
Nice.
Casting time is short and accuracy is very good as well. It'll be useful for me. Suddenly the mage heard a voice that came from his right side. The man who spoke was none other than Khan. Help me, shouted the man who was hit by the fireball as his entire body started burning on the spot. Wails of a man being burned alive resounded in the middle of the dense tree line. Everyone present had an ashen expression on their face. You bastard, shouted Ilya, the blonde man who brought these people to kill Khan. Suddenly, the locket he was wearing let out a blast of energy, and the blonde man finally broke through the pressure of war dominance aura and charged at Khan. Some people just don't learn, do they? Sighed Khan. As soon as Ilya came in Khan's proximity, he swung his sword right at Khan's neck. Swoosh! Suddenly, the tall figure disappeared right in front of his eyes. I already told you. You don't have the skills. A voice came from behind Ilya's back. At this time, the mage finished chanting some kind of spell and created a flower-shaped magical formation that spread around the surrounding area and nullified Khan's war dominance aura. Khan, who felt his war dominance aura suddenly fading, gave a surprised look. All the people who were rooted on the spot under the immense pressure finally felt their bodies become light and able to move again. Terrifying. The man in front of them was terrifying.
Oh, so it can be countered?
Or am I not strong enough to maintain it when someone interferes? The war dominance blessing only works at the physical bodies of the targets. But if the targeted individual has an object with magical skill or an innate ability to break the pressure exerted, then the ability will not work on that individual. The system, which had been silent in the past 3 days, finally spoke again.
I see.
So that's how the mage escaped. Khan spoke to himself and started running towards the recovering as he activated his newly synthesized offensive ability after mixing Alpha Wolf's claws and Blue Lion's claws, one of the monsters he hunted in the forest with the help of Rudra. Khan's hand turned into a black and blue patterned claw, and a layer of hard metal-like skin covered his entire arm. Khan named this ability Ripper Claw, simply because it was enough to rip through any steel or metal armor easily. As both his arms turned to that of a monster, the surrounding adventurers who were just about to start running at him stopped midway.
What the hell?
Is he some kind of monster? Yelled one of the people. Don't keep staring at him. Attack him together. Shouted Ilya as he fully released some kind of offensive ability that made his sword and his entire body glow red. The archers in the group took out their arrows dipped in some type of green poison and started shooting at Khan. Khan, who was already expecting such attacks, hopped from one side to another and evaded these arrows without a problem. His survival instinct blessing was acting as his own spidey sense, letting him feel the oncoming attack and murderous intent directed at him. Swish! Khan disappeared from his position and appeared right next to the mage who broke through his war dominance aura first. Let's start with you. Khan dashed at the mage and put his claws through the man's chest and ripped his heart out. Mages truly have no defense, said Khan, and charged towards the close-by swordsman who was just taking his sword out of his sheath. Rip! Before the man could even take out the sword completely, Khan appeared in front of him and swung his left claw at the man's neck, taking out a chunk of meat from his neck as he swept past the man without even looking. A small spray of red blood gushed out of the man's throat as he fell on the ground, completely horrified and surprised to even register how quickly Khan sliced through his neck without even giving the man a chance to defend. Clang! 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 Sound of metal and something extremely hard clashing together rang, and one by one, the bodies of these adventurers who had planned to ambush Khan fell on the ground. In just 20 breaths since the mage broke through the war dominance pressure, more than 8 people died at the hands of Khan, who looked like a ferocious beast hunting them one by one. His movements were no different than a predator beast taking out his prey one by one with its swift dashes and deadly claws. Every hit was aimed at a vital point, and he'd make sure that his claws hit deep enough to kill the man on the spot. The remaining 5 people were so scared that their bodies were shivering with fear and their hands trembled so much to even hold their weapons properly.
A monster.
The man they thought was a weak nobody turned out to be a monster. His actions and the way he killed his targets were no different than the monsters these people often fought in forests or during their dungeon expeditions. Khan's eyes were glowing red at this point because of his hunter's intent ability being active, which made him look nothing like a human. His hands were drenched in red blood and the droplets dripping from his sharp claws. Run! One of the men shouted as he ran for his life, trying to leave behind others before Khan could catch up to him.
Omega!
Khan shouted. Suddenly a giant 4-legged creature leaped out of his shadow and ran towards the man running away from the crowd. The dire wolf, who was the first subordinate Khan created, finally sprung up in action ever since they left the forest.
See you.
Who the hell are you? Ilya shouted, letting out a hoarse voice as he was barely able to accept this turn of events. This was supposed to be the other way around. He was supposed to cut Khan piece by piece and watch him cry and beg for forgiveness as Ilya tortured him to death for offending him in front of all those people in Adventurers Association Hall. But the scene in front of him was the complete opposite of what he dreamed of. Rather than being the hunter, they were the ones being hunted. Do you really want to know? He asked Khan as he walked towards the remaining 3 men. Yes, who the fuck are you? Shouted one of the men standing beside Ilya.
Well,
What's the point in telling to someone who's about to die? Chapter 19. Settling the Grudge. As the attackers stood rooted on the spot, comprehending the meaning of Khan's response, a loud voice rang behind their back. Gaia! Suddenly the men heard an agonizing yell that came exactly from the direction where their comrade had run off to. Just as they turned their heads back towards Khan, the man in front of them had already disappeared from their sight. Above you! A loud voice came, and the remaining men saw a man leaping in their direction above their heads. But before the two men standing beside Ilya could even react, their bodies were slashed vertically by two giant claws, ripping apart their bodies and their leather armor in two. A gory scene of two mutilated bodies, having their torn entrails, bones, and mangled flesh lying on the ground in a puddle of red blood, took place in just an instant. Ilya, who was the only man remaining from the group of attackers, was trembling in fear as a stream of hot liquid leaked out from his crotch. Khan looked at Ilya, totally disappointed at the sight in front of him. At least the other men died with dignity.
let me go, said Ilya with an aghast expression on his face.
Even uttering a single word was hard for him in front of the monster standing next to him. And invite all the trouble of you leaking everything about this incident to everyone in the city? You think I'm stupid? Khan mocked the man who thought he still had a chance to stay alive after everything that has happened.
If you kill me,
my brother will find you, and your death will be very painful. He's one of the strongest people in the city. Nobody dares to fight him one-on-one. Said Ilya, trying to weasel his way out using his mighty brother's reputation, who was the leader of the Groundhog Adventurer team. At this, rather than thinking about the consequences, Khan quickly grabbed Ilya's throat with his right hand and squeezed his sharp claw. He took away the sword Ilya was holding and threw it away with his left claw. Don't worry. If he finds trouble with me, I'll send your brother to meet you in the afterlife. Khan whispered close to Ilya's ear and tightened his clutch. Ilya tried to wriggle his body and struggled to break free from Khan's claws, but in front of this ferocious monster, his attempts proved futile. The light in his eyes dimmed and his body finally lost all its ability to stand.
Dead as a rock.
Khan threw away the lifeless body and wandered around his surroundings again, to see if he left any witnesses alive. Just then, Omega returned with his mouth and snout stained with fresh blood, and he threw the head of the adventurer, who ran towards Khan's feet.
Who's a good boy? You are.
Khan smiled as he petted Omega's head.
Now.
Time for a small meal.
You're hungry, right?
Khan asked as he started walking towards the dead bodies and put his hands on them.
Absorb.
Khan went through them one by one and started absorbing all the useful skills of these ambushers.
Truly pathetic.
Khan snorted as he finally finished absorbing the skills and abilities of the dead people. Apart from the assassins and the mage, none of these idiots had any useful skills. Khan said furiously, as if all his efforts in killing these people went in vain. A system, show me all the skills and abilities I gained just now.
Khan commanded.
Host has learned the following abilities.
Stealth, D rank.
Fireball, C rank.
Fort wall, D rank.
Shooting accuracy, D rank. Mastery in close combat techniques raised. The host has unlocked the following combat skills.
Vital strike.
Dash.
High leap.
All the abilities 20% mastery at master rank.
Useless.
The way these guys were acting, I thought they'd at least have some decent skills. Khan sighed as he started ripping apart the bodies of these men and took out their cores situated inside their hearts.
Garbage.
Khan almost threw away the core he held in his hand. Because unlike the bright red cores he got from hunting even the most normal monsters in the forest, the cores of these adventurers were very dim and didn't even give any shine at all. Khan could easily tell that their cores were very weak. Not even worth taking a glance at.
Omega, eat them up.
Make sure to tear their limbs with your fangs and claws. And the cores are all yours as well. Khan said as he didn't want to leave any traces that'd lead suspicions at him. Because sooner or later, these dead people would be declared missing and someone would investigate the matter. And eventually, they'd come looking for him as he had a small quarrel with the blonde guy in front of so many witnesses in Adventurers Association. That's why he only attacked these people with his claws alone, without using any weapon, and told Omega to rip apart their bodies while he ate them. So that it would look like these people were killed by some strong monster inside the desolate trees. No one would suspect a thing. Khan couldn't even loot their weapons or any money these people had on their person, as that too would arouse suspicion and eventually create unnecessary trouble for Khan. He was no noob like those reincarnated MCs who made these rookie mistakes and left a trail behind. Khan waited for 20 minutes as Omega was having a hearty meal of blood, flesh and cores. After he was done, Khan ran through the woods and went towards the direction of the opposite gate instead of the one he exited the city. Even with his sprinter ability, it still took him an hour to reach the other end of the city. He was back to the exact gate where he entered the city the first time. Khan got in the queue of the people going in. And as his turn came, the city guard stopped him. Identification. He said, the same city guard from the morning.
Brother.
I don't have one. I lost all my belongings a few days ago. He said Khan sheepishly. No identification, no entry. Said the guard in an upright manner. Why don't I tell you my terrible experience 2 days ago if you have the time? We can talk there in the corner.
Khan said in a hushed voice.
The guard gave him an understanding gaze. He signaled another guard to take his place as he walked towards a corner away from the gazes of people. Khan pulled out the money he got from selling the monster cores this noon in Adventurers Association. The pouch was even twice the size of what Nicola had gives the guards this morning when they entered the city. Brother, I hope you can ignore my sorry situation. Here's a small gesture of goodwill for your kind and understanding nature. Said Khan as he tucked the coin pouch in the guard's pockets.
I see.
You're a very generous person. It will be too heartless of me to leave a man like you outside of city walls which aren't safe at night. The guard said with a grin on his face as he felt up the big pouch of coins. Khan nodded and entered the city again. He had to find the Black Griffin Merchant Enterprise now, as it was the only reliable place he could stay at. Khan bought another set of clothes and boots from a store and threw away the old ones in a sewer, so no one could recognize him from the clothes either if there came a time of some unknown witness linking him to the murder. This time, Khan bought a white shirt and gray pants with reddish boots. He strode around the city as it was already getting dark. Since he was still new to the city, he had to ask many people for directions. After another hour of painstaking search, he finally stood in front of the Merchant Enterprise building. Only now did he understood the extent of Nicola and Elenev's prestige. Because the building in front of him was damn huge. 3 stories building, which was no smaller than a castle. Plenty of merchants and common people, including many mixed-race humanoid demi-humans, were barging in and leaving out. As soon as he entered the building, he heard a voice.
There you are.
I thought you won't be able to find our location. Said Elenev, who had a bright smile on his face. Yeah, I got lost a few times. This city is too big for my taste. Laughed Khan as he shook Elenev's hand. I heard you had some trouble at the association. People told us when we asked about where you went. Said Elenev with a worrying gaze.
Nothing big.
Just some rich guy picking up on me for no reason. All matters have been settled already. Replied Khan with a nonchalant face. After that, Khan and Elenev had a delicious meal in the private quarters of the Merchant Enterprise. Khan finally tasted some decent food and not just roasted meat of monsters who always made him wary of having food poisoning. To Khan's surprise, the food was extremely delicious and full of various spices he never tasted during his previous life. He ate voraciously like a barbarian who was starving for weeks. This put Elenev in a complicated mood. Poor guy, he didn't even eat anything since the morning. He must not have any money on him either. Thought Elenev as he looked at his savior, who was straight up gulping down the solid food without even chewing it properly. After they finished their dinner, Khan was led to a nice room with decent furniture and finally,
a bed.
Metaphorical tears dropped from Khan's eyes as he was finally going to sleep on a bed and not some tree trunk or leaves like he had in the forest. Elenev's chest constricted after looking at Khan.
Poor guy.
He probably never slept on a bed before. He thought as he imagined Khan sleeping on the ground and rocks. Take rest and find me if you need something. My room is in the next wing. I'll see you tomorrow. Said Elenev and left with a heavy heart. Khan closed the door of the room and jumped in the fluffy bed. This is life. He thought and relieved all the tension he had in his body. Suddenly, a plan emerged in his mind. He let out a devious smirk as he fell asleep hugging the soft cushions and looked like a baby sleeping soundly. Sorry, Nicola and Elenev. But I'm going to use you guys to earn a lot of money and reputation in the city. Because the next day, he was going to become an adventurer. Chapter 20. Gearing up. The gust of morning wind flew by, accompanied by the pleasant chirping of birds. A man opened his eyes and finally left the land of dreams to return back to reality. Khan opened his eyes and yawned, and nothing can beat a real bed no matter which world. Said Khan as he finally looked outside the window. It was around 8 a.m., based on the position of the sun. Con let another yawn as he tried to stretch his body. He slept like a baby for the first time since he got reincarnated. As he freshened up and took a warm bath first, he quickly left to meet Elric. After searching through some rooms, he finally found the office and saw the young merchant busy tallying the ledgers and reports. Do you have a moment? Con asked as knocked on the door side.
You're awake.
How was the night? Asked Elric as he chuckled a bit. Best sleep I had in this life. Con smiled and laughed. So what are you doing? He asked.
Nothing much.
Just doing some run-ins on the profits and future consignments.
Damn, it's not easy at all.
Segregating everything based on their type and dates is a pain. No wonder my old man left it all to me and assumed the command of shipping the materials. Elric let out a sigh as he looked at the files and documents on his desk. This was just the beginning. There'd be piles of these things later during the day.
Need any help? Asked Con.
Do you even know how to read? Asked Elric. Yeah, I have formal education. My uncle always made sure that I had enough knowledge about everything that can save me from being conned.
Con chucked. Good.
I on the other hand had to learn it all because I had to inherit the family business. Otherwise I'd be a scholar roaming the world now, seeking and learning different places, their knowledge and culture. Only if things were different. Elric said regrettably as he started imagining the different life. Well, we gotta make do with what we have. Con said as he started helping out in sorting the ledgers. He was an accountant in his previous life, so knew how to organize the records with their uses and priority. This surprised Elric as he was still finding it hard to do it all efficiently. It had barely been a month since he started working in the merchant enterprise his father created. Till now, all his youth went into studying and lazing around, so he yet had to grasp the things related to the profession. By the way, Con, have you thought about what you are going to do? If you'd like, you can work for us as a bodyguard. You certainly have enough combat experience and fighting skills. Said Elric as if this was something he had planned to ask a long while ago. I appreciate the gesture, but I'm not the kind to follow orders. Besides, I need your help.
Con said. I see.
What can I help you with? Elric got curious. He wasn't going to pester Con, since he was his own person. At most, Elric could offer him a job. I need to borrow some money to buy clothes, some weapons and some light armor.
Con replied. For what?
Oh, I forgot that you were a mercenary. Elric replied as sudden realization hit him. Those days are behind me. Now I'm going to be an adventurer. Replied Con as he sat on the chair.
Don't.
Didn't you see what happened to us that day? Even though you're strong, you won't always make out alive. Think about it carefully. Elric said sternly as he didn't want to see his savior hugging the goddess of death.
Don't worry.
I have my reasons. Besides, I don't know anything else to do anyway. Here, I can at least run away when my life is in danger, and I won't have to protect someone other than me. Con said, his reasoning sounding logical. Fine. Said Elric and started writing something on a yellow paper and then put on their enterprise's seal on it. Take this to our merchant shop situated at the 3rd Street on the left. Show this to the manager. He'll get you enough supplies. Said Elric as he looked at Con helplessly.
Thanks.
I'll pay you back soon. Said Con and left the office. Following the directions, found the merchant shop and its manager. The manager looked like some kind of demon race type of demi-human. He had red stonish type of skin and 2 sharp and dark red horns protruding from his head. Con could even see a small tail coming out from the manger's waist. Con didn't ogle or look surprised at all. After absorbing the legendary Somer's core, Con was always in control of his emotions and his demeanor was that of a tyrant. You wouldn't see him acting surprised unless he wanted you to see him like that. After he handed the letter, the manager looked at him with surprised eyes. But didn't ask how Con got the letter. He signaled Con to follow him and showed him their decent collection. The manager then showed Con many types of weapons, armors and various accessories cased on highly protected shelves. Con wasn't some noob, so he chose the most useful set first. He chose a black trench coat which had small intrinsic gold pattern in the middle and on sleeves. Why black? Because badass protagonist rule no. 3. All badass main characters wore black clothes. He then chose a gray jacket which was made from a material similar to leather, just more sturdy and even lighter. The black pant Con chose were very comfortable and sturdy at the same time. It wouldn't hinder his movements when he ran fastly at all. Then he chose hand gloves where fingers were exposed, but the grip was strong, like how people who went to the gym used. Next, he decided upon brown boots which were made of some kind of monster skin, but also had a fully tactical design that prevented unnecessary sound while walking. After the clothes, Khan chose a fantasy-style double-edged longsword, which looked very big and heavy, but Khan lifted it with just one hand as if it was a small knife. Author. It's not a Chinese longsword, but a medieval knight-era type 1, just like Dante's Rebellion sword for example. Khan then took 2 daggers, a belt and a holster made for adventurers which had many useful pockets and places to put small weapons in. Khan then moved to the potions and accessories section. He chose medium health recovery potions and poison antidote potions. Khan, who had read plenty of mangas where protagonists chose adventurer profession and do their shopping, so he wasn't wandering around like an amateur and picked what he needed the most. The antidote potions weren't for him, but to help others or use it on himself to appear as someone who'd need it after getting poisoned. Then Khan's finally found the most important thing of them all. A small space ring, used for storing up various things. Khan asked about the price and his ears almost bled after hearing it. The space ring could only have 7 square feet of inner space in it. But the cost was already 5,000 gold dramas, currency of Rocco's empire. Khan knew that the letter Elenev had something like, let him choose what he wants, but Khan wasn't going to be that shameless. In the end, these guys had to make a living. So he chose the cheapest one, with only 3 square foot of inner space. It still cost 2,000 gold dramas, as shown on the price tag. Based on his combat skills and personal skills he got from absorbing from his killings and his survival blessings as well, Khan chose to skip on enchanted ornaments and protection amulets. The manager stood beside him, showing no expressions on his face. Khan changed into his new clothes and equipped all the new gear, hung the huge long sword on his back and finally left the merchant shop heading towards the Adventurer Association. As soon as Khan left, the manager grabbed his head and started pulling his horns. What the hell was this guy's problem? Even though the letter said he should be allowed to buy whatever he wanted for free, this guy shopped for merchandise worth more than 20,000 gold dramas. He wasn't being modest at all. Everything Khan chose was one of their best line of products. Even the small daggers were high-cost weapons because of their elemental attacks and runes engraved on them. The sword itself was made up of mithril, one of the strongest metals in the world. It could even withstand the weight of an entire house, made by their best Grandmaster rank blacksmith. The long trench coat had a magical defensive barrier that could save you from a fatal attack. It will stay stainless regardless of how much dirt you play in, and won't wither in different weather and seasons for at least a decade. That was part of rare magical clothing, bought only by high-ranking military officers and rich nobles. On top of that, he chose the grey jacket which was made from one of the most costly materials and had very high defensive strength. It could easily stand against a direct thrust from a sword or a dagger. The boots were made up from wyvern hide. They could even withstand extremely high temperatures and would even help a person walk on lava for few minutes. A truly great work of craftsmanship. The low-grade recovery potions were very hard to make even by expert alchemists, let alone a medium recovery potion. Let's not even mention the space ring Khan bought. That was hard to come even in a prestigious merchant enterprise, as theirs as space magic artifact refiners were very rare and these rings rarely appeared on the market. This guy robbed them of half a month's profits. But to make matters worse, he appeared as if it was him being considerate and not buying too much. This wasn't some modest shopping. This was daylight robbery. And in their case, the manager was showing their most valuable products with a smile on his face to the robber himself. Oblivious to all these facts, Khan looked like he was very humble and hadn't taken advantage of Elenev's kindness. He finally reached the Hall of Adventurers Association. Khan let out a small sigh and said, "Eat time to make some money."